the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver, where if you're heading to a game or an event downtown, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grace Sass hitting switches, conducting things alongside intern Lachlan Irvin. We got a big show coming up. It's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Langley's got the Nissan Rogue. This is a bestseller for good reason. Right now, you can get into it for 3.99%, and you get the winter tire offer included there. You can buy a set of partner brand winter tires and get up to $170 off. So that with a Rogue, pretty sweet ride. Head to Applewood Nissan in Langley. It's all good at Applewood.
Do you think we'll need winter tires again here in the city this year?
I don't think in the urban center, but if you're planning on skiing, let's hope. Let's hope. Please.
I've been telling my parents, they're new to Vancouver, that, spring, mid-February, the bloom is on. Just you wait.
It's been a while since we saw the crocuses and cherry blossoms in Feb, but maybe this year.
One can always hope. Poll question today: should the Canucks trade this year's first-round pick for Sean Monahan, centerman, Montreal Canadiens? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter and YouTube. More on that in a second as we mark the one-year anniversary of Rick Tocchet's first game with the Vancouver Canucks. As mentioned earlier in the week, he's coached 82 games with the Canucks, 83, I guess now, and has them on a 110-point pace. And look, we understand that management has done its part. It's a better bottom six here. It's a better defense, better backup goaltender than what we saw last year. But has Rick Tocchet been the biggest catalyst of this turnaround? Because I think you can make that case, and I don't think you can make that case very often with a coach in this sport. But I think it's been that dramatic, that extreme, the Tocchet effect on these Canucks.
It's the easiest explanation for why a lot of guys are having career years. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just too coincidental. Like, what are the chances you get a dozen guys on career years right now? And it's the easiest explanation as to why the core seems to be working better than it has after multiple years together under other head coaches, right? Yeah. So when you have the same group, but they're put together differently by a new person and have success, that's really the only explanation. I don't think Teddy Bluger alone, is the key, for instance. It's the accumulation of everybody being put in the right spots by Rick Tocchet.
Well, and many would say a healthy Thatcher Demko, and absolutely fair. And Philip Hronek coming in on the right side. Of course, we didn't see him very much with the Canucks.
But even he, career year.
No, but that's the thing is, okay, you can say a healthy Demko, but just the gap between last year's team and this year's team is so extreme. And, players who, as you say, are having career years who weren't working out as Canucks last year, like a Connor Garland, like a Tyler Myers, who are working out this year. Okay, on this poll question, and a lot of early voting here, very lopsided in the no column, and some saying, guys, why are we even asking this question? Mentioned this yesterday. Frank Saravelli did a deep dive in a fantastic article at Daily Faceoff on Sean Monahan and what the Montreal Canadiens can expect by way of return. Now, we went through Sean Monahan's game on Tuesday's program. Something I didn't mention, but meant to, is Frank also went back and looked at centermen of roughly this profile and what they fetch at the NHL trade deadline. So I'm going to give you three examples here, going back several years. The New York Rangers and Winnipeg Jets, a trade for Andrew Kopp. Rangers acquired Andrew Kopp and a 6th-round pick. The cost at the time of the deadline, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, and Morgan Barron, who has turned into a bottom 6 NHL player for the Jets. That second-rounder became a first-rounder because the Rangers advanced to the conference final and Kopp played in X number of games. It was a conditional second. So it winds up being a first, a second, a 5th, and Morgan Barron for Kopp and a 6th. That's a pretty heavy price to pay. Barclay Goodrow, Tampa Bay Lightning, acquired from the San Jose Sharks. Goodrow and a third-round pick to the Lightning from San Jose for a first-round pick and a C-level prospect. That's probably relatively cheap in comparison to be able to get a third-round pick back, so effectively you're dropping 2 rounds in the draft for Barclay Goodrow. Winnipeg Jets, St. Louis Blues, Paul Stastny. Jets acquire Paul Stastny with 50% of his salary retained by the Blues for a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and the rights to an unsigned collegiate player who was actually a halfway decent prospect when the deal was made. You take a look at those sorts of prices, and don't get me wrong, Kopp, Goodrow, Stastny, all good players. I'd argue they're all roughly in the Sean Monahan realm. And so that's what leads Frank to conclude he thinks the Canadians are going to get a first-round pick for Monahan. And we should note, as many are saying in the comments, it's not like we're talking about a typical Vancouver Canucks first-round pick. We're talking about a first-round pick where if the Canucks, dare to dream, get to a conference final, Stanley Cup final, it could be as late as 28 through 32.
Even a second round
even if
appearance.
It's in the mid-20s. Yeah, and in a draft that nobody is really sitting there saying generational, deep, anything like that. Could very well be a good draft, but it's not like some of the drafts previous where already we were hearing about how great the crop of talent.
But you should also take a look at who else is around him right now. 31 points this season for Sean Monahan, equal to Tarasenko and Lindholm.
Yep.
If we had made the poll question, which player would you give up your first round pick for? I think Lindholm probably wins that hand down. I bet you Monahan finishes third in the voting there.
Well, but Lindholm is going to be plus.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So way bigger acquisition cost,
right,
for a guy that's got the same production. And over the course of their career, Sean Monahan, 229 goals in 728 games. Lindholm, 211 goals, 790 games. Like Monahan for his career, a far bigger goal scorer. Now, you don't have to reach as far back for Lindholm to find a 42 goal season. You have to go a few years further back for Monahan. But ultimately, the pedigree's there. He seems to be enjoying health. He's played 47 games this season for the Montreal Canadiens, so clearly he's the healthiest he's been in some time. So I think you can believe a little bit more on what you're seeing there, that the point totals are reminiscent of where he's at this moment. I get the reticence, folks.
Yeah, who doesn't?
There's been a handful of pretty indifferent years here for Sean Monahan, and he's not the player that he was with the Calgary Flames. But if he's half the player, that's a decent trade deadline pickup for. Again, and folks, you're overpaying at the deadline. Like you have to you refresh your mindset here. You don't get market value. You have to pay up.
You're overpaying for the top guys.
Yeah.
You may find a bargain or at least a fair trade down market a little bit.
But for the rentals, I think Monahan's going to be a top guy in the rental market.
I think Lindholm and Gensel are the two big prizes here in terms of rentals.
Yeah.
But you got to ask yourself, if it's a first-round pick for Monahan, but it's a first and Höglander and something else
for Lindholm
or Gensel.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact, Gensel and Lindholm, you were also going to have to do some cap gymnastics there. You probably have to send money back, which means you're sending a player back.
Or does Susie all of a sudden stay on LTIR till the end of the season?
I was thinking about that, Blake, but if he's due back in early March, do you really want his last game in mid to late January?
Not ideal.
No. So, Monahan feasibly you add with no subtraction to your team, whereas Lindholm and Gensel are probably going to require subtraction from your team that has been so fantastic. And of course, we've heard from so many Canucks fans who say, don't screw up the chemistry of this group, which I think is a decent shout. Now, if we go a little further down market, and I reached out to a friend in Ottawa today, Steve Lloyd of the TSN station there, on Vladimir Tarasenko. And Steve thought he was having a pretty good year here. He's a heavy guy. He forechecks. He, he's a thicker dude as well. He's not afraid of contact. So he's not your typical Russian winger, even though he's a diminished player from his heights. He's had a lot of big injuries there. Plus he's got the Stanley Cup pedigree. Now, again, the money there on Tarasenko, and of course, we're also in a world where you would anticipate some of these sellers at the deadline will be able to retain money as much as 50% as allowed by the CBA. But he's a $5 million guy. So are you going to be able to fit him seamlessly? Would you have to accommodate whatever money is coming back? I've heard that they like Jordan Greenway. That makes one. He's got 11 points in 34 games.
He's purely for physical presence.
A center.
Yeah.
He's on a $3 million ticket through next year. And then there's Kevin Hayes in Seattle, who's another big dude. He's 20 points in 40 games. So he's a half point per game player. And he's on a $3.5 million ticket for this year and 2 more. Maybe St. Louis retains 50%. That makes him a more attractive player at 1.7, 1.8 per year going forward. He's 31. But if you're taking on Hayes or you're taking on Greenway, of course, you are understanding that you are likely to have them for next year as well, and whether or not you think they're going to provide value and utility at the money,
by the way,
that they're being paid. Henrique, we've had the discussion about Adam Henrique as well. Another rental, $5.8 million. Even if Anaheim retains 50%, you're probably going to have to do something to accommodate his salary.
Canucks Army's got a value picks ranking, if you will, for guys way down the queue that, I have underlying stats that maybe fit Rick Tocchett's system, so you can go check it out there for some real deep dives. But all of it, and that list and the list that Matt just went over there too, folks, you may be a little bit out of practice. You either pay sun, moon, and stars for a very complete player in the prime of their careers, but we mean sun, moon, stars. One of your favorite players, one of your best draft picks, and probably one of your best prospects out the door. So if you're getting upset about a late first rounder, my goodness, you won't like the sun, moon, and stars price. Or you give up something like the first round pick on its own for a flawed player on perhaps a flawed salary or an aging guy that has some injury risk. That's what the trade deadline gives you, unless you're doing a full-on hockey trade, which again means you're probably saying goodbye to one of your favorite roster players and one of your favorite prospects as well. This is a messy art at the trade deadline, folks. You're not going to get a trade where, unlikely anyway, where you get a trade where like, we gave up nothing, we got a ton. That doesn't happen. It's not going to happen.
If you're looking to improve the bottom six, we saw with Max Lapierre, Chris Higgins, you can do that reasonably affordably. If you're looking for a top 6 player, we saw this with Derek Roy, remember? It's probably going to cost you more than you are hoping to spend. And of course, last year we saw it inversely. Bo Horvat to the Islanders for Beauvillier, Ratu, and a first round pick, which frankly for the Islanders wasn't the worst value, particularly since you re-signed the player, albeit on a very rich
Callum
extension.
is wondering why nobody's considering Boone Jenner.
That's an interesting name.
Yeah, there's
and I've heard it out there as well. It's a player with term, so
and decent goal scoring this year. But again, only 18 points, so he's we got 5 assists on the year.
Modified no trade, a team no trade list. So so long as you're not on that, but 3.75 for Jenner. Now a lot of miles there, plays a heavier game, and will be 31 at the end of this season. So if you think that he provides value over the next couple of years, then so be it.
Hasn't played 82 games since 2016, 2017.
Right, but
he's been dinged.
A player with term who, like Columbus at some point wants to be better. So the acquisition cost on Jenner, given that he's on a pretty decent salary with not so much term left that it's daunting, being paid to age 33, which is appropriate, could well cost you a fair bit as well. Lotto line. Rick Tocchet talking Tuesday about how it struggled for 3 or 4 games and he might break them up. And there's apparently a meeting in advance of Wednesday's game against the St. Louis Blues to hash things out. I know Rinkwide at Rinkwide Van is asking a poll question that's running 50-50 at my last check. Is it time to break up Lotto line? It's funny, however long ago it was that Tocchet put them back together. We asked the poll, is this the best way to go? Most people said yes, although a lot of people who said no said, look, might be the best way to win a game. Is it the best way to win multiple rounds in the Stanley Cup playoffs when so many of your eggs are going to be in that basket scoring-wise, and which allows the opposing coach, particularly on home ice, to line and defense pair match against your big guns? Where are you now on Lotto line?
Well, given the fact that the red hot start that they had when they were reassembled out on the road has now significantly cooled, and the fact they're coming off of maybe their worst performance against the Blackhawks, where you might have thought they'd feast. Yeah, I'm game for a reset here. Again, it's always there. It's always up your sleeve. You don't have to sign contract for this never to be assembled again. Like, it's always there for him. But in the meantime, as you are always in this eternal search for chemistry as a head coach, yeah, sure. Let's see what it looks like split up. And you know, given that you've got, I was going to say Kuzmenko coming off of a 2-point performance in which he looked a little bit more engaged, do you try that line again? Mm-hmm. Do you go back to Pettersson with the Russians and see if you can create chemistry once more? I think it's probably a worthwhile endeavor for Rick Tocchet.
Mind your Enkos.
Yeah, mind my Enkos, yes. Does that include Demko, or is that an Emko?
Shiny helmets. And I'm told we're supposed to call them metallic, not chrome.
See, I disagree with this. I know people get angry that I'm even quibbling. Metallic. You think back to like 80s sports cars when they were metallic.
Yeah, they weren't shiny.
They had sparklers in them. Like it was like a bowling ball. You know, bowling balls always had the flex. Like it was like that. I don't think that's what that helmet is. That's a chrome blue helmet. But we're not supposed to call it.
Nevertheless, metallic shiny blue helmets debuted at practice. The talk afterwards, though, just breaking them in, no plans to wear them. But, of course, they had posted that social media video saying coming in January. So, shiny blue against the Blues. JT Miller was asked about them after practice and said, we wear what we're told to wear.
Yeah,
so
he was a little nonplussed.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're winners with the players. Will they be winners with Canucks fans? We shall. Again,
of the 3 Chrome Domes, I like this one the best versus Vegas and LA.
No, yeah, those are too much. Now, a serious story, and we have been waiting for this shoe to drop for some time, but the story broke in the Globe and Mail Wednesday morning that 5 players from the 2018 World Junior Championship Canadian team have been asked to surrender to London police in their investigation of a sexual assault. 5 different players on that team have taken leave from their current club teams. It includes Cal Foote, defenseman with the New Jersey Devils and son of Vancouver Canucks assistant coach Adam Foote, his teammate Michael McLeod. Both of those players missed a Devils team event last night. Carter Hart, the goaltender of the Philadelphia Flyers. Calgary Flames forward Dylan Dubé, who took leave from the team a couple of days ago for what the team said was mental health in its press release. And then Alex Formenton, a one-time draft pick of the Ottawa Senators, who has played in the league and who is currently playing for a Swiss club. It's taken a long time to get here, Blake, but over the last few years, because some of these guys' names have come up in terms of trade targets. Like we talked about McLeod at one point as a trade target for the Vancouver Canucks and his ability to play the mill. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Canucks were asked about the Foote brothers because Cal's got a brother in the National Hockey League, Adam's other son. And the Canucks said at one point, well, it's kind of a strange dynamic to bring in the son of an assistant coach. And that's absolutely true, right? It puts the young man in a tough spot. It puts the assistant coach in a tough spot.
And another player that we thought was going to be a part of this process, Maxime Comtois, people also bandied that player about as a player possibly on the move.
Although, to be clear, he's not taken leave from his club. And if you're doing the straight math and saying these are the 5 players who London police want to talk to further, then it would appear that Maxime Comtois is not amongst that group. Now, we're going to get into another league story here in a second, but you and I were both talking before we started up the show. This is a test for the National Hockey League, its member clubs, and the head office, right? You've told us that hockey culture has got to change in this regard. You've told us that after the Chicago Blackhawks scandal and, of course, the victimization of Kyle Beach. We'll see where this goes, but needless to say, this is a very serious matter that is going to have a lot of people looking long and hard at the National Hockey League and how it goes about addressing these matters.
Well, and the league not looking good too. They 6 years ago, I believe, and Travis Yost had something on this on Twitter. They released something what they call the core principles, something to that effect. League sort of mission statement, if you will. It's no longer available on the website. It was there. It's gone. So core that it lasted all of 6 years and it's not even available on the website. And those might have been idle words anyway, but they can't, this league can't seem to get out of its own way with regards to even towing the right company line.
Well, for years, the strategy and the tactics of Gary Bettman and the league have been provide no transparency and it'll blow over. People's attention spans will wane. Needless to say, if charges are coming here, then it's certainly not blowing over anytime soon. And so this will be a matter that the National Hockey League will have to deal with in a most public way, because as anybody who has done any kind of news reporting or court reporting will tell you, and Blake, I know you've been there as well, public documents are generated. Public documents tend to have a lot of unseemly details in them. And then, of course, if you're talking about trials, it's even more pronounced.
Yes.
Now, many are saying that, and again, this is the National Hockey League and how it deals with scandals, was a diversionary tactic created this morning, Blake, when lo and behold, all of a sudden,
just coincidentally,
the owners of the Utah Jazz of Real Salt Lake, the sports empire there in Salt Lake City, have a public release, a press release, asking for the National Hockey League to initiate an expansion process. These used to be state secrets, Blake, in terms of which markets.
Do we have precedent for this? Do you remember anything like this ever?
Well,
I don't.
I mean, certainly during the old expansion rounds, going back to San Jose, Tampa, Ottawa, Florida, the NHL called for expansion interest.
Right.
Teams bid. They announced that they were
very different, though.
Bidding. But this one, I don't want to say comes totally out of left field, because for the better part of a year now, people have been hinting about the National Hockey League having an expansion appetite. There is also an Arizona Coyotes element to this that we're going to get into for a moment, but it does absolutely serve the purpose of creating another big topic in the National Hockey League on a day where London police are asking 5 players to come surrender on sexual assault charges.
If it is, wow. And if it is, why? Because this didn't happen on the NHL's watch. It's the same sport. Yeah. Those players, those 5 players are now a part of your membership, if you will, more the NHLPA membership, but you know what I mean. But it's 5 of what, 800 active players in the league. It's not like it's the broadest of brush on your group as a whole. It just seems like pretty rash stuff, if this was counter programming, if you will, to the news cycle, to go to this extent. And it's funny, all of a sudden, the tall poppy saying, I want a team, honestly, the NHL website is carrying this story. The last time we saw something like this, Jim Balsillie was trying to bring a team to Hamilton, and the NHL couldn't stiff arm Jim Balsillie. And I'm not asking for sympathy for Jim Balsillie's tactics here, but they did not like Jim Balsillie being so public, so overt in his plans. And all of a sudden, they're posting this story and commenting on it on their website.
Yeah, I do remember Seattle and Vegas very much being identified as expansion markets.
But that was at the start of the NHL.
Remember the commissioner being cautious but cryptic and effectively leading horses to water on Seattle and Vegas. Of course, Salt Lake City would make a 33rd team if you're expanding,
messy.
Look, we went a few seasons there with Vegas as a 31st team. Some of us are old enough to remember a 21-team league. You remember that, Blake, before the
31st team was okay because it was a stepping stone to 32.
Right.
What's 33? We're going to go to 34, really?
We know how greedy this board is, the greedy 32 and Gary. This is money that isn't shared with players. So could I see just a straight expansion to Salt Lake City? I suppose. But
no.
Now here comes the Coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, they're playing in this itty-bitty mullet arena, which they don't own, which is not NHL appropriate. And there is supposed to be some sort of word on the fate of the Coyotes by the All-Star game, which is a week and a half away.
Yeah.
This from Marty Walsh, the executive director of the National Hockey League Players Association. They were talking about, we're going to find a new place pretty quickly. The year has gone by. They haven't found anything, at least to my knowledge. So the clock is ticking on Arizona, in my opinion. And it's good to see an NHLPA executive director stand up and say this.
Yeah.
Because due to the NHL's revenue sharing plan, the Arizona Coyotes and the revenues they're not able to generate is a drain on the league at whole. And it is certainly a drain on the player compensation, which you may have noticed has stayed reasonably flat in comparison to their compatriots in other sports. We're now far enough beyond COVID that you should have had a recovery or close to a full recovery. So now there's pressure being exerted from the players and from their union. I think for the most part, NHL players don't love to wade into controversy and be voices out there criticizing another organization or a member club. But we have heard anecdotally that, look, what's going on right now in Phoenix is not worthy of the national. And I don't mean the team for once, because the team is actually once again punching above its weight class, getting fantastic goaltending, and is in the thick of it for a wild card in the Western Conference. But showing up to this itty bitty arena and all the amenities that aren't there for professional athletes in the best hockey league in the world.
It's like you're working with the revenue of 31 teams, because if you take the attendance in Winnipeg and the attendance in Arizona and add them up, that's effectively one sold out Bell Center. So you've effectively got really the venues of 31 teams operating to create the HRR that the NHLPA wants to see elevated to increase the size of the pie. So, 32 teams, they want 32 venues, and effectively they've got 31 venues going right now. It's one thing. Honestly, Winnipeg is tough enough to swallow at 15,000 seats.
Well,
very
especially
small
in Canadian dollars, and especially when they're doing 10 and 11 as they were
right at the start of the season.
At the start of this season, before it became apparent they have one of the best teams in the league. Now, let's play along for a moment. You and I have both been very skeptical of Houston in the past and of a third go around in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Which is getting so much publicity.
I just don't think those communities like Phoenix want ice hockey.
Yeah.
Houston's got the arena. They have a potential owner there who owns the Rockets, who has in the past expressed interest. The report on Atlanta was they were going to play in like a suburban rink, which is interesting.
According to people that know the city of Atlanta, this would be the right place.
Okay.
But
fair enough. It's a traffic choked city. In fact, has some similarities to Phoenix in that regard, and that it takes a long time to get around.
From A to B,
in that community. But we have both wondered in the past, Salt Lake City. First of all the cities I've been to in North America, Salt Lake City looks the most like Vancouver. You're sort of framed by the mountains.
Ocean's a bit of a
there's no ocean, but
there's a lake.
Pretty much everywhere you look out, you can see the white-capped mountains. As the release talked about from the Smith family, there is a history of hockey in Salt Lake City. It's a winter place, right? Of course, it hosted an Olympic Winter Games and a sensational gold medal game, at least if you're Canadian. And it's a Western market too, which of course might be helpful for divisional alignment, particularly if this is a relocation, not an expansion.
Yeah, you can't go east.
Put it this way. If I'm asked to rank cities I want to see in the National Hockey League, and of course, this is also a market that doesn't have Major League Baseball and doesn't have the National Football League. Now, the Utah Jazz have a massive foothold in that community, and you've got a couple of universities there, University of Utah, which is right in town, and BYU, which is not far away, that have fair followings in both football and in basketball. But if you're asking me to rank the cities that I want to see the Coyotes relocate to or the NHL expand to, well, the top of my list would be Quebec City, because I'd love to see another team back in Canada. But barring that, and both Videotron, the owner of the arena in Quebec City, and the National Hockey League have basically thrown cold water on the notion of a team coming there anytime soon. If that's the case, then yeah, let it be Salt Lake City.
I mean, some of the smaller markets in the States have done very well because, as you talk about, they become the apple of that community's eye. San Jose Sharks are a great example of that. Need the affluence. I think Salt Lake does actually have a pretty affluent community as well. I think Portland would fit the bill too. Might kill the Winterhawks to some degree, yes, but there might be enough appetite there in Portland to make it work.
I just never hear about Portland's in these discussions.
No. There's no smoke
for
there.
years. And I would check in with people in Portland when Paul Allen was alive, and just kept being told time after time, there's just not a lot of interest from Mr. Allen on hockey. And we say that because, of course, he owned the Trailblazers, and his sister and family trust now own the team in the arena there. So, no, I put it this way. I think Salt Lake City would have a fighting chance of being a very good market in the vein of San Jose, which for years filled the rink and created a foothold in a very busy sports community there in the California Bay Area. So
now, to wrap all this up, it's very possible this is a legitimate story in and of itself.
Oh, no, it is. It is a legitimate story in and of itself.
The suspicion is, did you need it to come out today in this moment in order to cover the ass of 5-year players? And to me, my opinion, and it's only opinion, is that yes, that's exactly what's happening here. But I don't think they fabricated the story per se. I think it's very possible.
No, it's and the other thing we should say about Salt Lake City is, and look, this is changing to some degree. We saw the Raptors win an NBA championship. We saw the Denver Nuggets and Milwaukee Bucks win NBA championships. But it is becoming very difficult to win an NBA title from a B or a C market unless you have a superstar who is willing to be there.
That you've drafted.
Giannis is willing to be in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Jokic turned into a superstar with the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
The Raptors were able to trade for Kawhi Leonard on a short-term basis to forge a championship team. I think we are a long, long way from NBA superstars wanting to play for the Utah Jazz.
You're right.
Now, to each their own. Could have a superstar who comes along who says, no, that's exactly my vibe. Karl Malone was certainly that. John Stockton was certainly that back in the day. But if you're looking at a world where the Utah Jazz are always going to be a plucky underdog or have to forge a team of component parts without getting that transcendent NBA superstar, and Blake, I know you know this from covering the Grizzlies, when one of those guys is on your team or comes to town, in the case of the Grizzlies, like the city sort of stops, right? Like that is the big show, and everything else is the appetizer or the dessert.
How far away are we from that in the National Hockey League? Like, I know Johnny Gaudreau went to Columbus. Mm-hmm. He might be the last guy that chooses to go to Columbus. I don't know that I've got a lot of NHL guys I can think of that are being like, yeah, Salt Lake's my vibe. Mm-hmm. It'll be tough.
Casey DeSmith looks like he will be your starter for the Vancouver Canucks Wednesday against the Blues, the penultimate game before the All-Star break. They played the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday. They're looking to sweep this 5-game homestand. They have won 3 in a row going into it against the Coyotes, against the Leafs, and against the Chicago Blackhawks. This from our Jeff Patterson, who asked Rick Tocchet at Rogers Arena Wednesday morning whether Cal Foote taking leave from the Devils would have any impact on Adam's role with the Canucks. Tocchet said Adam is standing tall. Can't say anything more than that. Adam is fine. He's good. So
sounds like he'll be on the bench.
Yeah, we'll see where that story goes from here. And of course, we will see if these Vancouver Canucks can keep the winning going. Best team in the National Hockey League on January 24th, a full calendar year from Rick Tocchet's first game on the Vancouver. And remember, Blake, this came amid the absolute calamity of the Bruce Boudreau firing, where everybody in the hockey world knew that Bruce was dead man walking, to the point where he gets serenaded with a Bruce there it is in his final game, a loss to the Edmonton Oilers, and stands on the bench for an extra few moments, taking it all in, probably knowing, or at least hoping not, but giving it a significant chance that was going to be his last game as a head coach on an NHL bench, and getting emotional. And then the Canucks pushing back on that, Jim Rutherford in particular, as opposed to just taking the L and saying, look, we didn't handle that appropriately. At that point, Blake, I thought this team was years, if not decades away from getting back into any conversation about being a contending franchise.
And if you remember, there was not a great new coach bump for Rick Tocchet. He was 2-1 the first week that he was at the helm.
They were better, but
then they lost 3 of 4 the second week, and then they lost 2 of 3 the third week, and they lost 2 of 3 the fourth week.
Well, it was so dispiriting. Yeah. Like, you could tell that everybody around the Canucks just wanted last year to be over.
But more, my point is, Rick Tocchet takes over, and 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, you still probably couldn't predict what's happened this season. Like, you still wouldn't have predicted, oh my goodness, they're going to run roughshod, as opposed to the comparison of Bruce Boudreau taking over when he did and going on such a run. There was all sorts of optimistic predictions about what the next year would happen, and of course it didn't.
For those of you listening on podcasts, a reminder, we are live on YouTube every morning starting at 11:30. Now, the entirety of the show is not on YouTube. It will be this first block daily and our first interview. The rest of the show on podcast. So coming up, we have Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck. And TSN hockey analyst.
Some comeuppance coming. We
have a special guest who crashes this interview. We'll get to some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter on the podcast side, as well as Uffe Bodin, who is a Swedish hockey reporter, takes us through what he knows and what he thinks going forward with Elias Pettersson, with Nils Höglander, with Elias Lindholm, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, not to mention Patrick Alvin, the first Swedish general manager in the National Hockey League. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great.
Hey, gang, if you're finding yourself a little directionless with a purpose on a game night, may I recommend Greta. It's a great spot to catch the game throughout the season. They're at 50 West Cordova, so you're on foot. You're just walking to and from the game. It's a lot of fun. It's a go-to spot for food, drink specials, and fun before and after the game. They do have specials every day. They've got all-day happy hour on Wednesdays, and they've got all those arcade games to keep you busy as well. So make it a fun game night at 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar and Grill. Visit them at gretabar.com.
Joined now, as we are every Wednesday, by former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Mr. Frank Corrado. How we doing, Frankie?
Frankie?
Good. There's a lot going on. I got Blake Price coming at me on Twitter. I'm sure we're going to get to that. I brought a good defense today. I had to change my Twitter profile picture. There's a lot happening in my world right now, and a lot of it is centered around Vancouver.
Well, for those who missed it, Leafs Canucks on Saturday, and you were challenged. There was a bet with Wyatt Ardnt, the stanchion of Canucks Army.
He called me out. It was unprovoked. He called me out. I was happy to oblige. And I played for both teams, okay? So it's not a punishment for me to have to put a Vancouver Canucks picture as my Twitter profile.
Right.
I'm in the Toronto market. Like I'm here in Toronto. I talk Leafs every single day. I love talking Canucks with you guys, but I had the Toronto picture. So I'm just, that's the market I'm in. So now, instead of just putting like me coming out as the third star with my stick in the air, that would have been really cool. I said, let's actually make it a real punishment. I got dummied by Raffi Torres in the playoffs, and it's a great picture. It doesn't look good for me, but I said, if the Leafs lose, I will make that my profile picture for 1 week. So that's where we're at. I took a few hits like that throughout my career, but that one is, it's picturesque, let's say.
Well, you're a very good sport, and I must say, I saw the video clip of Raffi dummying you, and wow, that was a hellacious hit, Frankie.
Like hitting a wall.
So, you know what? Like, I was coming out of junior that year, and I had probably seen that play happen a million times that year, and I would go hit the guy, no problem. Actually thought I was catching him off guard. Sure enough, it's the NHL, and this guy's like as tough and as strong as they come, and he sees me coming. And when you watch the slow-mo replay, Ray Ferraro's doing the color commentary on it, and you can see Raffi just like, see I'm coming, and he leans into me, and he didn't even budge. Like, he didn't budge an inch.
Oh my gosh.
And there are few hitters in the history of the National Hockey League who hit like Raffi Torres. I was pleased to see it was clean, though.
Yes. Yeah, it was clean. So he got me with the clean one. It was all good. I got right back up and went to try and like win the puck battle. And I was getting some flack for like some of the cross checks. Like they were like 1 out of 10 cross checks, really light. I don't know why I wouldn't just cross check him a little bit harder, but that's where we're at. That's what happened. And I got to relive it now on Twitter every time I go on.
No chance for revenge on Torres, but you could get revenge on Wyatt. I mean,
I would like to. Like, the thing is, like, the
is that
Grady? We're in the middle of an interview, man. Like, what's with this music?
That's the stanchions music.
My God, it's the stanchion.
Gentlemen, I'm listening to the show. And Mr. Corrado over there is, everything's fine. I'm looking over here, and obviously he's very good at what he does. But he said one thing I took a bit of umbrage with, saying unprovoked. Now, I have to say that Mr. Corrado came up through the Vancouver organization, the Wolves, the Canucks, gets his first NHL goal in Vancouver. We supported him. Healthy scratch. People were cheering his name on, became a fan favorite. And Mr. Toronto makes his avatar picture of a Leafs jersey. Unprovoked? Are you kidding me? So I'm sorry. I did everyone a favor. I stood up for Vancouver. And what was the score of that Leafs game again? Frank, what was that score again? Was it 6-4? Was it? 6-4?
Yeah.
Where were these Austin Matthews goals I was supposed to cover in that game? I don't know if I saw them.
He wasted them in Calgary, I guess.
Yeah. He was on the wrong team, on the easy team, I guess. He took the easy way out. So yeah, I just want to say unprovoked. I don't think so, sir. I think, but yeah, all in all, great sport from Frankie. It was a lot of fun. I was worried when it was 3-3 and they came back. I was a little bit worried. You gave me a little wink from the Nylander wink.
I gave you the Nylander wink. And you know what's funny? As soon as I saw that comeback happen, I knew there was a Nylander wink available in the GIF world. And at 3-2, I got 3. I didn't want to send it at 3-2, but at 3-3, I knew this was out there in the ether, and I said I'm going to send it at 3-3. But the Leafs could listen. Vancouver played a better game, anyways. They deserve to win. But listen, we'll try and fire something up because I think it would cause you so much pain to have to sift through like the best of Austin Matthews goals and not just watch them, but then go through the effort of picking your top 5, clipping them, putting them together. Like, I can't imagine what that would do to you.
I did. Well, I was actually sitting there going, if I have to do this, like, I think I have to reach out to Steve Dangle. I got to do a coordinate. I got to get his help on this. I don't know how to do any of this Matthews stuff because imagine going through every single goal. Like, I don't know. I didn't want that. So.
Leafs Canucks Stanley Cup. Oh, can you imagine?
No, we need that now because here's the thing, Frank. Wyatt is still asleep at 4 p.m. when Leafs games start. All right.
It's true. Yeah, I barely know who Austin Matthews is. I don't know.
Maybe having breakfast.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? Wyatt's probably, he's on Twitter saying like, oh, all you East Coast people, you're sleeping when the Canucks are playing at 1 a.m.
That's 100%
sleeping at 4. Had 14 Red Bulls the night before.
Yes. It's so much easier to take shots at people when you guys are asleep, but yeah, it goes the other way just as easily.
All right. So sadly, we're done with Leafs Canucks this year, unless, as Blake says, Stanley Cup final. So if that's the case, but certainly for next year, we will organize a watch party. Okay. Stanchion, Frankie, the two of us will have some fun.
I love it. And you know what? Maybe we'll bring in a couple of our favorites. We'll welcome them in along the way. Maybe Eddie Lack makes an appearance.
Oh, there you go.
You know,
Eddie would love to watch me suffer. I know that.
We'll do Wyatt, Frankie, and friends along the way.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Some guys who played for both franchises. We'll get Mason Raymond involved here. We'll get a bunch of the guys who cross over.
Let's see if Santorelli's available.
Okay, well, hey, you're going to have to deliver Sundin. Okay, Corrado?
My childhood hero. You know what? My childhood hero, and it breaks my heart during the Centennial Classic, he wasn't available to be there. I met every Leafs legend except for Matt's, and I still haven't met him. So that's maybe one day.
Anybody have Felix Potvan's number?
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah. Potvin be a great one.
Long
Tiger
list.
Williams,
Russ
of
Courtnall,
course. Rick Vive. Oh, yeah, it's a long list.
Yeah.
Plenty of options. Wyatt, good seeing you, buddy. Thanks for this.
Yeah, have a great show,
you can crash any one of our interviews at any time, but
we're happy Frankie now. Frankie's in my targets now. That's it. He's my new Eddie Lack.
You're in the scope.
See you, buddy.
Yeah.
See you guys later.
Beware the folding chair under the apron, Frank.
Oh, man. You got it.
One issue out of the way. Yeah. Second issue on the docket.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
I didn't realize we were interrogating Frank Corrado today.
I warned him. The TSN power rankings come out. And the Oilers have won like every game this season or something to that effect. They're number 1 in the power rankings when, in fact, they've got more losses in the last 20 games than the Vancouver Canucks do. So even if you throw out their terrible start, they've still lost more than the Canucks. And yet you're just so blinded by this win streak, Frank, that you agree with their number 1 spot.
Okay, let's start here. First of all, the language of the question is important. Right now was how the question was worded. So who's the best team right now as of today? I chose the Edmonton Oilers. Now, that question gets presented to me earlier in the day. That's not like I'm not just on camera and they're like, oh, I got to answer it. Yeah. So I had a little time to dig in. #crunch the numbers. So as you know, like I like analytics because it tells me the story of what has happened so far. It's not a projection as far as what's going to happen into the future. Right. So now I feel like it's valid to get into the analytics as far as what is happening beneath the surface that's leading to the results on the ice. I go to SportLogic. We have a great setup with SportLogic here at TSN. They give us these breakdowns of all like these key areas of the game, offensively, defensively, goaltending, special teams. Like we really get a deep dive into these things. The 5-on-5 categories, there's 13 offensively, the same 13 defensively. The Edmonton Oilers right now are in the top 10 in the NHL in 23 of those categories. So it's not like it's really impressive when you take a look at the page. It's like, you know, first, second, fifth, like all these key categories. So then I go, okay, let's compare this to the Canucks, who are playing really, really well. Canucks were about half. So there was a lot of categories like key ones where, you know, high danger scoring chances. We had talked about this where the inner slot shots were high, but the high danger scoring chances were still not like, they're still in the bottom third of the league. Like I'm seeing 23 rank. And, you know, they're actually, believe it or not, when it comes to those things, the Canucks are better defensively than they are offensively.
No kidding.
They are.
And it's the structure, the Tocchet structure, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So when I'm doing this, I'm saying, okay, right now I'm seeing a team that's not doing it by accident with Edmonton. Like they're like, you can see it's all there beneath the surface. The Canucks are not doing it by accident either. But if you're asking me like who's better right now, I'll say Edmonton. The one caveat to that is Stuart Skinner has been playing really well recently. If that doesn't continue, I don't think it matters what they do at 5-on-5. I don't think it matters like high danger slot shots. I don't think any of that matters if they get the goaltending that they got at the beginning of the season. And so if you're making a projection Like if you're saying who do you not want to play against between Edmonton and Vancouver, you can build compelling arguments both ways. But I have a hard time with that goaltender matchup saying, you know, I wouldn't want to run into Edmonton more than I would want to run into Vancouver, because Demko has been the best goalie in the league, or right there with Hellebuck. And Skinner, if he doesn't play the way he's played over this last little stretch, Edmonton's a completely different team, and it really comes down to one piece for me.
How do we make sure that's a second round matchup? Because wouldn't that be fun for both markets and for the league?
First, in the Wyatt Ardnt vein, I have a follow-up. Why do you hate the Canucks, Frank Corrado?
You know what? I don't hate the Canucks. I think the NHL is a much better place when the Canucks are a good team.
Yes.
Like when the Canucks are not a good team, and I hate to say this, it's almost like people forget, like you're way out there on the West Coast, it's late games, and people forget about it. But now with the star power, with the team playing as well as they are, the narratives involved, it's better. The NHL is a better place with the Canucks. I loved my time there. Like go into the game when I was in town for the Canucks Autism Network charity tournament. I went to the game. I was so impressed by so many different things, like the in-game operations, like the crowd. It was great. Like I loved it. I loved it.
Very good of you to answer the question seriously, because it was certainly not posed seriously.
It's all good.
Secondly, Frankie, speaking as people who are in the Pacific time zone, we'd like to forget about most of the last decade ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny though.
Like, really, I have to watch this game
with things like those power rankings. Though it's funny. Like even if where were the Canucks on this latest edition? Third, maybe on the TSN power rankings. They take offense to that. They're third. They're being ranked third in the league, and people are taking offense to that.
Well, here's another thing on those power rankings. So actually, this was another thing I forgot to mention. The Oilers are still underscoring what their underlyings are.
No kidding.
Meaning like they're still going to potentially score more based on what they're generating. And as you know, I don't need to tell you guys, the Canucks are outscoring it by a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not going to be doom and gloom and say that at some point that's going to stop, but the potential for more scoring is there for the Oilers. And I think the Canucks have kind of hit what they are offensively.
First, before I ask the next question, we have had so many guests over the years, and particularly those who were players or coaches, more players, talk about, oh my God, I don't know how you guys exist in that Canucks Twitter space. Like, oh, it's so toxic. And so this and that. Frankie Corrado has been the one consistent guest we've had over the years who said, I love Canucks Twitter. It's undefeated. I love watching it. I love engaging with it. So we thank you for that, buddy.
Good sport. Good sport.
You've been an awesome sport. I got some heat last week by saying I think the Canucks are free and clear of the Oilers. They're 13 points up on Edmonton. Edmonton does have 4 games in hand, 1 head-to-head left with them. Of course, the Canucks see a lot of Vegas and LA late in the schedule. Do you see a pathway for the Oilers to finish ahead of the Canucks at this stage?
Slight chance. Like I wouldn't be betting on it. Like I think Vancouver has built up enough of a lead. Not to mention that I don't expect the Canucks to go on like what the LA Kings have done, where they can't win a game anymore. Like I don't see that coming for the Canucks. I just think they're too well built. They play too well as a team now. They're too well structured. Their goalie is too good. Like LA as an example, they don't spend any money on the goaltending position, right? Like both their goalies combined make a cap hit of like, is it $3.5 million? Like it's nothing. It's nothing they spend on their goaltending. So sometimes you get what you pay for. So you're going to have Demko, and DeSmith has been really good this year. So that's certainly a factor in not letting things get off the rails here. But they're just like the Canucks are. And as the season has gone on, we talked about this last week or the week before, as much as the regression is coming, there are areas of the game where they've improved on as this time has gone on. So that's going to slow down some of the regression with the team. So that's another thing they have going for them. And as much as Edmonton has played well, they're not going to win every single game. Like they're going to lose games. So as time goes on here, eventually the clock just runs out and you're not able to catch the Canucks. I don't see it happening. Like it could be the strangest thing ever, and it would, but I would be really surprised if the Oilers were able to catch the Canucks at this point.
Frank, 1 year ago, Rick Tocchet coached his first game with the Vancouver Canucks. As we know, this is his third head coaching stint, and he'd spent some time as an assistant, particularly in Pittsburgh, where you had him. Max Domi came in here on Saturday and said he's one of the best coaches in the world. He forges relationships with his players unlike any other guy. He's the Jack Adams favorite. Tell us a little bit about the Rick Tocchet and perhaps if you've seen any changes from afar now that he's gotten another head coaching stint.
So my time with him was a little limited because I wasn't on the roster that much. But so the first game I played with the Penguins, he was responsible for doing the meeting, the systems meeting with me. So he sat me down, we went through everything together. Everything was crystal clear, and he kind of kept saying you've done this before, you know this stuff, right? He really made it seem like this isn't some brain surgery kind of stuff we're doing. You've done it a million times, so you should feel comfortable. And I doubt he would even remember this, but I remember it. The first game we played in Buffalo, I don't know what was wrong with me. I wasn't at a great place in the season for me. I hadn't played a lot. It had been a year and a half of not playing, and obviously nerves are involved. I just I kept falling. I was either falling or getting hit. And, I went back at someone and got them with a good shot. And previous to that, he was kind of just looking at down the bench, come on, man, a little stronger there. You gotta go at guys a little bit more. And he wasn't even the D coach that would have been Jacques Martin at the time. So I think, to Max's point there, he really cares, right? If he sees something, he's just going to let you know. And I think he has a really good way of doing it. And I remember I went at someone, got him good. And it was I looked to the bench at Talk for at that little bit of reassurance. And he just gave me the nod, a good job kind of thing. And I was 2 games into my time with the Penguins at that point. I didn't play after that, but I had been around them. I was around them during the playoffs more as a black ace. But I just think that. I think that's what guys remember about him. And if I remember that, and I wasn't there for very long with him, there's a lot of other guys who have spent a lot of time with him that have been through numerous, things where they could point to and say hey, Talk actually cared. He talked to me about this. So my kind of thing is just, making you feel like you've done it before, and you should have the confidence to go out there and do it, and just taking an interest in trying to help the player out. But you could tell, I could tell how close him and Kessel were. That was pretty evident. They had built a pretty strong connection. He was the Kessel whisperer, right? And even someone like Malkin, who, I think they had such a good dynamic there with Mike Sullivan. He can be so hard on you. But for the right reasons. He was always that good buffer between Gino and Mike. So he's just, listen, a lot of guys like him for many reasons.
Connor Garland was on John Scott's podcast talking about the system, the X's and O's of Tocchet, and keeping shots to the outside, and it kind of shed some light on the PDO stuff that people have been talking about all season long, and that the Canucks save percentage is always going to be pretty high because they do force a lot of outside shots. Have you seen that with Tocchet in terms of insulating? And do they allow the goaltenders to face a higher number of shots? To some degree, yes, but maybe not the ones that they feel like are going to go in.
I think when we talk about areas the Canucks have improved this season as time has gone on, to maybe help regress that PDO, that's the one that stands out the most. At the start of the year, for me anyways, they were giving up a lot more of those high danger chances, and Demko had to be really alert and really sharp early on. Nothing would be happening, and all of a sudden it's bang, bang, play. Whew, that's in the slot. Demko had to make a big save. As the season has gone on here, and as they've become a little more entrenched into what Tocchet wants to do, I find you're seeing that less and less. So that's something that takes some time. It's a new group this year. Everyone's really trying to get on the same page. Now the decor has changed a little bit from, the start of the season. They brought in Zadorov. That's a big factor. Juleson's game has been better. So I think that's when I say defensively where they've improved, that's the biggest one. We're not getting those surprise, it's in the slot kind of moments of the game as much as we were early in the season.
Not a lot of 2-on-1s surrendered and all that sort of stuff too. Not a lot of big breaks.
And the save percentage is going to be good because of that, but also because like you're going to have good goaltending. You're going to have Demko and DeSmith. They've been a really, really good tandem this year.
Lastly, Frank, from me, in your ongoing quest to make us smarter hockey fans, and of course you speak Rick Tocchetese, want to read you a quote from Tocchet about Kuzmenko coming off Monday's game against the Blackhawks. You do the interpretation for us. He did a good job surfing the guy really fast. I saw a little pep when he surfed over that guy. It was something that we talked about. What's he getting at when he's talking about surfing?
Okay, so surfing is a term that's usually used for defensemen. So if I can paint a picture for you, the Canucks are playing in the offensive zone. And let's say the puck is on Quinn Hughes' side of the ice on the boards. And let's say they're playing the Oilers. The Oilers winger makes a pass to the Oilers centerman. Okay. Now let's say Hronek, the right shot defenseman, he's the one who takes an angle and angles that centerman back towards the boards where that puck had been. That's called a surf. So when the inside player kind of like takes a good angle on you and brings you back towards the boards. So with the forwards, I've always heard this called a soft lock. So you soft lock one side of the ice and try and angle the player into the boards. He's probably using that term as surf, as a soft lock. So essentially what it would be is Kuzmenko was the high forward in the zone in a good spot defensively. He moved his feet. He took a good angle on the player, and probably he pushed the player into a position where they could kill the play and recover the puck and transition it and go back the other way. That's my interpretation.
I've heard it as channeling too. Channel a guy over. Yeah.
I got to say, of the many things I love about Tocchet, and particularly as a communicator, but the lexicon that he has brought here.
But he's not afraid to explain X's and O's.
No, I know. That's the
great.
thing.
There's no proprietary secrecy
He's
here.
got infinite patience for explaining the game of hockey to media and fans alike, on top of what he's doing coaching the players. And to me, that's what makes him a treasure here.
When he was on TNT, they would do those segments where he would have the whiteboard and they would get the camera from up above, and he would do a great job of breaking it down in such an elementary way. And like, if you were a hockey player and you watched it, you think, okay, like this is basic stuff. But someone watching at home, they would really be able to like, and he would use the lingo. This is what I liked about when he was doing it. He would use the lingo like you just said, but as he's going on, he explains what that means.
Right.
And I think that's so important.
Yeah, super.
As do you, sir. Thank you for this. Thank you for participating in our reindeer games today with Wyatt. Love the new avatar and look forward certainly to the next Canucks Leafs game, but to next Wednesday as well. Thanks,
yeah,
Frankie.
now the question is going to be, how long do I leave that avatar and what do I make my next avatar?
Oh, until the Canucks are eliminated, man.
You're
riding with that,
or the clincher
until they're out of
until they
playoffs.
get an X beside their name and they've clinched the playoff spot.
So I quickly before I go, I pay for that stupid Twitter blue for the blue check mark. And so they take the blue check mark away when you change your profile picture.
Even if you pay for it?
Well, they say they have to review your profile. So once I get my blue check mark back, I don't think I'm going to be inclined to change the picture again for a while. So it might just end up staying there.
Finally, a Twitter rule I agree with. Well done, Frankie. Thank you.
See you guys.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog's Chase My Tail Pale Ale.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.